Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of the Never Peak Project podcast. Guys, today we're taking a little bit of a break from the usual Mindset Monday and business update episodes that we have every Friday for something a little bit different. One of our very first guest episodes is going to be with a returning guest that helped me throughout my journey across the country do walk updates. I think we recorded two or three, so not too many updates, but I think that they were very impactful in terms of that beginning, middle, endish portion of the walk. But today I want to bring him back so that we can talk a little bit about what I've been doing post walk. It's been about, 2-ish months since I finished walking across the country. So I just wanted to bring back my good friend, brother, I don't know, maybe future podcast partner, Stephen Khansefid. Stephen, how's it going?
Hey, good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to see what you've been up to since you've stopped
hmm
walking. Um, and yeah, how have things been?
Really good. I have done a ton of stuff since I've gotten back. Something that I was telling my life coach when I was finishing up my walk was when I finish walking, I want to hit the ground running. And I feel like that
Mm,
has been it's been what I've been doing, you know? So seeing a lot of people focusing on the business and just trying to recap everything from the walk. It's been a lot.
hmm hmm when you say recap, what does that mean?
Yeah, so during the journey, every single day, what was it? 175 days, so March 10th through August 31st. I tried to keep
hmm
notes throughout each day of the journey, just little
hmm
things here and there, people that I met, interactions that I had, just the memorable experiences from each day. So right now, I'm currently done, I think, up to day 55 or 60 or so in terms of actual day updates. And that process of, documenting it and recapping it, a lot of writing is what I mean by that. But each day takes me anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half because I'm going through pictures, text messages, emails, trying to make sure that I pack as much as I can into those day updates. I noticed
hmm
that, I feel like there's a lot of shoulda, coulda, wouldas from the walk, but I wish that I had kept better notes throughout it, especially since I had so much time to do it. Again, I was dodging cars all day, every day, but it would have been a lot
Like
easier
frog.
to, like Frogger, yeah.
Did you, when you looking back on your memos and messages that you've recorded, were there any of them that were like day 53, the voices in my head are
PETA, the horse is here. No, not really. I don't think I really thought that my journal was going to be a descent into madness. I made that joke before I started,
Mhm,
but
mhm,
no, I feel like what is it, like the morale, or I don't know, my sanity was kept very high throughout the entire adventure
mhm,
because I was able to talk to
mhm.
people. Like I called you a few times. I talked to Brett almost,
Yeah.
every day, if not every other day. Talked to
Mhm.
Julie all the time. I had access to people at all times.
Right.
So I never really had anything weird like that. I definitely think the in-person interactions for a period there were a little bit few and far between, but that only lasted
Mhm.
for a couple days, and even then, it was not that big of a deal.
Right. So you're you're looking through your messages and your memos, and you're compiling it for what?
Yeah, so there are three books that I would like to write at least. The very
Oh.
first one is just the journal. So that's just going to be I guess, a transcription of all 175 days, what I was doing each day, the thoughts that were going through my head, the things that happened, the people that I met, as much as I kept track of and can remember. And that's just going to be a very, I don't know, very basic, just a biography of the walk. I don't want to I don't
Mhm.
want to edit things out of it. I want to be very much unabridged as much as possible. It's going to be
Mhm.
very long. It's going to be very redundant. And I was telling that to our buddy William that we went to college with.
Mhm.
And I was,
Yes.
we were on a hike, and I think we were a few miles in. and I was telling him about the books, and something that I noticed about the book so far, the journal, is that every day starts and ends kind of the same. It's like I woke up, I got ready, I stretched, my body hurt, I started walking. And then the days are a little bit
Mm-hmm.
different. And then it's I got picked up or I got to my final destination, I ate, looked at my route for the next day, made a few text messages, went to bed. I'm like, it just feels
Mm-hmm.
very redundant and it's like the same thing over and over and over again, but I don't know how to make it not sound redundant. And he said
Yeah.
something, I was like, damn, that's why I keep you around, Billy. But he was like, well, isn't that just the process? Like, isn't that the lesson there? Is that sometimes to get where you want to
Mm-hmm.
go? Like, there is that redundancy that you have to get used to. So I was
Yeah.
like, damn it, that's going to make it into the second book. So the first book is very much
The,
just, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, see, you talked about the trilogy, and the first book is you're saying is going to be just a recap of your walk, right?
Exactly.
And then, do you know what 2 and 3 are going to be about
Yeah.
yet?
So the second one is going to be a more, it's going to use lessons from my life, my walk, and post walk. I think it's going to take a few years to get out, so I'm sure I'll have plenty of extra stories from that experience. But that one's going to be a little bit more of I don't know how to put it, like a self-help life coachy kind of book. Really just
Mm-hmm.
putting in all of my thought processes, the metaphors that I'm coming up with. I've been writing some articles here and there about it, but just, instead of just a day-to-day recap of the walk, I want to use the actual lessons that I learned with the stories that I gained from the walk. So, for
Mm-hmm.
example, the one that I just wrote for my website is Lily Pads and the Frogs, how to chunk
Mm-hmm.
down big goals into manageable steps. So that's a process that I use when I was planning my walk was, I'm basically the way I thought, which is funny, you just said the Frogger joke, but the way that I kind of saw the whole walk was I'm just a frog getting from one side of the pond to the other. And instead of
Yeah.
looking at the entire map of the US and being overwhelmed by, all 3-ish thousand miles that I was going to walk, how do I chunk it down into these smaller objectives, kind of like checkpoints in a video game, right? So instead of,
Mm-hmm.
one big jump, how do I chunk it down from lily pad to lily pad to lily pad and swim in between? So it's just going to be
Mm-hmm.
lessons like that and explaining how that can apply to people's life, their business, nonprofit, family, etc. And then I have a whole bunch
Mm-hmm.
of other ones, which I feel like that could even just be a whole other episode as a sneak peek of the book. Um, and then, conversations post walk, like the one that I had with William about the
Yeah.
process and the redundancy or monotony that life can kind of have at times, or, just other conversations I've had with people about the walk and their takeaways and things that I've
Mm-hmm.
learned from that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Um, so obviously these books are going to be like New York Times bestsellers and all that stuff.
Well, yeah, because I hope
Um,
you buy enough.
all 30,000 copies will be
All
purchased from
30,000
me.
copies off of a teacher salary.
um, how are you going to publish these? Are you going to go through a publishing agency? Are you going to, I know a lot of people, they publish through like Amazon. Have you thought
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah, and I feel like the hard thing on this also is if you Google something or you look on Reddit or any Facebook group ever, that everybody gives you such crazy different answers. And it's, again, very overwhelming. So I think that
Mm-hmm.
the method that I'm going to take, at least for the journal, would probably be just self-publishing on Amazon. Just
Yeah.
get it up. What was it? One of the people that I stayed with, Michael and Diane, the bird sanctuary people, he offered
Mm-hmm.
to do a cover for at least one of the books. So have him do a
Oh,
cover for the
cool.
book. I thought that was really sweet. Um, so I'm
That'd
like,
actually be really cool. Anyone who like helped you along the way,
yeah,
if they're willing to like create a cover for you.
yeah. So I thought that that was really cool because I was like, I don't know what the hell I'm going to do for this. Am I just going to have Chat GPT throw something together? Am I just going to take a picture and throw it up there? But I was just like, cool. As long as I'm okay with parrots and the birds from his sanctuary being on there in some way, I'm sure it'll be fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, so self-published that one at least, and I would really love to figure out. I have a few friends that are authors. One of my teachers from high school, Mrs. McHenry, she's a published author with like dozens of books, I think. One of my coaches that I've worked with, MK Chavez, she's also an author. So I'm going to reach out to them and kind of see, hey, how does this work? What did you do? How would you recommend I
Mhm.
tackle this? Because I've seen some things that say some publishers will pay you to write the book. Like they'll give you kind of an advance, like a few grand to focus on doing the book. So I think that that would be really cool. But
Yeah, that would be cool.
I don't know if they're going to give me anything for being some random schmuck that is writing one of these. So, but I would really love to figure out a way to be published with somebody for the more self-help life coachy one
Yeah,
and or the third one.
right.
Yeah. And
Um,
for
oh,
the
go ahead.
third one, I was going to say for the third one, I'm not sure when I would write it. I would probably write that one before the big one, but I would really love to do
Hmm.
one called Walker Across America. And, you know, the cat that I found, Walker, I think that making a
Yeah.
children's book version of my walk and just kind of, again, break
Oh.
down those concepts that I learned to a more elementary school age level, one would help me
Hmm.
understand them more and be able to explain it to more people. But I think that that would be, but I think that that would be more valuable for kids as well. Like, how do you make a big
Yeah.
goal? How do you overcome your sabotaging voice? How do you determine what the most important next step is, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think kind of using him
Yeah.
as the focal point would be super cute. And I think that also, what was it? The people that I stayed with, most of them had animals or some kind of
Mm.
creature associated with them. So, like the bird sanctuary, they would be parrots. And then, I don't know, like my relatives that I stayed with, they would be cats. And then I stayed with a guy
Hmm.
that had a Great Pyrenees and what else? Just oh, the reptile sanctuaries that I stayed with, you know. So I'm like, I feel like all of them could be
Hmm.
associated with some kind of animal in some way, shape, or form. I just think that would be
That
kind
would
of
actually be really cool because there are, I mean, it's already hard enough being a kid and like they don't know how to, one, they don't know how to problem solve, but they don't know how to uh, really set themselves up for success to
mhm.
achieve their goals either.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of the which you can also I don't know elaborate on as well from your experience with teaching. I feel like a lot of the education is focused on very basic math, science, listen to the book, do what you need to do, get the grade, go home, go to college, repeat, repeat, repeat. So I feel like
Mhm.
having those more soft skills of how do you actually plan for something? How do you actually look forward five,
Yeah.
10 months or years? And what happens when
Hmm.
your plans go out the window? Because my
Yeah.
experience going to Davis to be a veterinarian, like I had no idea what to do once I
Mhm.
realized I wasn't going to graduate with that degree. So I feel like being able to plan
And
for
and
that would be helpful.
yeah, and that's the other thing is like the students they're so close minded, and it's not even a fault of theirs. It's just that they don't have the experiences
Hmm.
to really think out of the box and see, well, this is a possibility for me in the future. How do I get there? They're
Yeah.
not capable of thinking that just yet. Maybe some of them, but not a whole lot.
Yeah. Being able
And so,
to, yeah, just look at things differently. There's an exercise that in one of the books I read, $100 Million Offers by Alex Hermosi. He has something he calls the brick exercise. Have you ever heard of that?
mhm, no.
Okay. So basically, what he does is he says you have 2 minutes, 120 seconds to write down every use you can think of for a brick.
Mm.
And most people will say things like, build a house, break a window, um, maybe a tire stop, door stop. And they kind of just have like, 4 to 10 things listed on there. And then he says, awesome, stop at the 120 seconds. And then he says, great, but did you consider the color, what the brick is made out of, the size of it, if there's holes in it, if it's a different shape than a normal
Mhm.
brick? And then he gives them another 120
Mhm.
seconds. And then it's like, gold brick used as currency, silver brick used as currency, small brick with
Oh,
holes,
yeah.
Lego. big brick with holes, a house for a fish, um, huge
Hmm.
brick, a chair to sit on, So it's like bringing it down from like these typical uses and just looking at it more creatively rather than just, he said a brick, not a clay brick, not a building brick, right? He didn't say that
Right.
specifically.
Yeah.
So I feel like that, I
Hmm.
can't remember what it's exactly called, but it's like that closed thinking versus possibility thinking. So that would be something that I
Hmm.
would want to incorporate into that book somehow because, again, moving back to the walk, there were a few times where I had to be kind of creative in how I was fixing things or getting things moving or making quick repairs or, you know, protecting myself at
Hmm.
times.
Right. Um, so you talked about when in your journal how your daily routine was like and things like that.
Hmm.
What exactly was your daily routine?
Yeah, so I think it kind of varied, but it was very much, it was very basic, right? So generally my daily routine, let's say I didn't have a host family and I stayed at a campground or something. My aim was to always wake up as early as possible. So if I had slept on my route, I didn't get picked up, I didn't get moved around at all. I would wake up as early as I possibly could, typically about an hour or so before sunrise. Start stretching, start eating, wash up, use the bathroom, start stretching a little bit. Then I would just start walking. Typically, I think maybe 1 out of 5 or 6 times I had a flat or I had something I needed to fix on the cart or my gear. So I try to knock that out as soon as I could. Um,
Mhm.
and then, yeah, just kind of walk for a few hours. A few rules that I made up for myself were this first one's kind of silly, but pee every chance you get, which, if there is a nice hidden area outside, do that. If there is a gas station or a food place, do that as well, right? Use the bathroom.
Mhm.
Because there were a few times where I was like, no, I just need to get to the next spot. Like, I don't want to waste 30, 40 seconds. I'm just going to keep going. And then I got screwed, and there wasn't a bathroom that was public use for another hour or
Mhm.
two. And that's something that also is going to get into the book, but in a different way. I can touch on that later. What else is there? Refill water every chance you get. So up until I'd say Amarillo, I was averaging about 2 to 3 gallons of water per day. And then after Amarillo, it was up to 3 to 4.5 gallons of water a day. So
Oh, geez.
refill water every chance I got, get snacks every chance I got, and just make sure that I was always good on food and water. Usually around, halfway through the day or so, I would stop for lunch. I didn't have any specific, like, I need to stop for an hour, I need to stop for 30 minutes. A lot of times I didn't really take a lunch break. I would stop just long enough to, make the little tuna salad sandwich or um,
Mhm.
open up the bars or whatever it is that I was eating or grab fast food and then eat it while I was walking. Because
Mhm.
for a couple reasons. One, I was kind of always on a time crunch because I always tried to get to where I was going before sunset. Or if I had a host family that was going to pick me up at the end of the day, I wanted to make sure that I got as far as I possibly could just to avoid any issues the next day or, to make the next day easier was always kind of on my mind. And
For
the
sure.
other reason, if I stop for too long, everything starts to hurt. Kind of like an object in motion stays in motion. But if I took a break for too long, then I have to, re-stretch and get myself back up to speed. But typically around
Yeah.
halfway point, I also tried to stretch and do a few things that Stephanie, my yoga instructor, sent.
Mm.
Um, and then I would just keep going. What was it? Throughout the day, people would usually stop or check on me or see what was going on. So that was always nice to kind of chitter chat and talk to people. And then at the end of the day, I would either set up camp at the campground I had, walk into the hotel that I booked, or get picked up by a host family that would take me back to their house.
Mhm.
And then they would drop me back off there the next day. So again, very
Mhm.
basic. Wake up, start walking, keep walking till I can't anymore, get picked up or set up camp, and start it over the next day.
Mhm. when you were walking, basically every day, because that's what you were doing,
Hmm.
did you ever have any like epiphanies about yourself, about life, about your journey? What
Yeah.
what was that like?
I think one of the biggest epiphanies that I had is in terms of people. I think that the biggest one would just be that everybody's out there trying to do what's best for them. And that's not
Mm-hmm.
saying it in a way that is self centered. I had this conversation with another coach recently, actually. The difference between selfish and self centered. I feel like a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people really are selfish, comma, and that's okay. Like everybody is there, like they're looking out for number one, right? They're trying to make sure that
Mm-hmm.
them and their families can get to the next day, that they're doing everything that they have at their disposal to move forward, right? And
Right.
that came to a front a few times, like when I would ask people if I could set up camp in their front yard and they would say no. Or if I would post online and people would say nasty things, I'm like, well, like that's just their
Mm-hmm.
worldview. That's what they want to do, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like those last few things I said were kind of focused on the negative aspect of it. But I think really what the helm of that was just staying with so many different people all across the country, seeing how people live differently from what I'm used to, or even what people down the street are doing differently. Like there is no right way to do things. Um, it's just all
Yeah.
so focused on, again, like I always try to think of things like when somebody does something or says something or exhibits a behavior I don't understand. I try to, it sounds a little bit weird, but like, why would a caveman do that? Right? Like, why would a caveman not let a stranger, like, um, what is it, set up camp outside of their cave? Well, it's because they want to protect their
Yeah.
family. They want to protect their wife, their kids. They don't really know me, right? Then I was like,
Right.
okay, well, how would that again, this is a funny example. I mean, in one of my podcasts, I compared people to cows. So my little weird metaphors. Um, but then, like, how would I get somebody to trust me? Right? Like, I would have social proof. I would be trustworthy. I would be the type of person that
Yeah.
should be trusted. And that's why I started trying to post a lot more on social media. Like, I started being a little bit more
Mm-hmm.
outspoken about the people that are helping me, and other people, like
Mm-hmm.
kind of like testimonials in a business, right? Like, the more good reviews you see, the more likely you are to work with that person. So I think that that's another thing too that I learned a lot about during the journey was like these different business aspects and like
Mm-hmm.
tips and tricks that I'd heard in all of the content that I consumed and listened to. Like it started to kind of make sense and I started to find some parallels. So I think that's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of it is like human behavior was something that I started to understand a little bit more. And as I learn more about psychology and behavior, I think things will start to make more and more sense, especially for the
Mm-hmm.
book and my own understanding. Does that answer your question?
Did you notice? Yeah.
Okay.
Did you notice that different either states or regions or even cities, the people re- behaved or acted differently?
I feel like this is like a point of contention in the walker community. Because I feel like I've heard from
Oh.
a bunch of other walkers that typically in cities, people are more rude or they're more indifferent to you. And I,
Mm-hmm.
I, I kind of disagree. I feel like no matter where I was, like every day, there were people that were stopping to talk to me and ask me what I was doing and offer support or,
Mm-hmm.
give me water or food or donations or just ask me questions. And I definitely
Mm-hmm.
felt like there was more. I kind of called it so on the maps, when you look at them, the cities are typically like these blotches of white, right? Like the cement in the buildings. So I was always kind of more cautious of the white areas on the map as opposed to the
Yeah.
green or blue or whatever. And the reason for that is like, the more people there are, the more problems you could face. So I think just the population density kind of does warrant itself to being more issues with people. But at the same time, I was in the middle of nowhere, and being a walker, you're the easiest target. Like, what am I gonna
Hmm.
do? Chase after them? Like, there, I can't do anything, right? So it's a very vulnerable experience. But
Yeah.
no, between the cities or the country areas, I didn't notice any major difference in how people treated me. I think something that could be a pattern was that in the cities there are more people, so you would kind of think that more
Hmm.
people would stop, and that wasn't the case. And I think that also goes back to the same thing that we said earlier, which was, everybody is so caught up in their own lives. Like, not everybody has time to be curious or willing to take the few extra minutes out of their day to ask what the guy walking down the street in the garb that I had is doing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or they just don't trust me. They don't know who I am. Maybe they didn't see the signs. They can't read from that far. I think it's
Yeah.
just, again, bleeding into that whole idea of, what was it? Somebody asked me if I felt sad or frustrated or mad or whatever when people said no. And I'm like, no, like, to me asking to, like, to stay with them or posting on these pages trying to find a place to stay. And it's like
Yeah.
the risk versus reward for them is so teeter totter if they don't know who I am at all. Like, the
Hmm.
reward of me staying with them is they help me out, they feed me, they give me a ride, and nothing happens. But on an actual level, the risk is I murder their family, right? Like, it's just like, I totally understand where you're coming from, and I'm not going to be upset if you say no. I just need you to tell me yes or no, and then we can go from there, right? So
Yeah.
that was something that I noticed throughout the time. And
Well, I think I kind of understand what you're saying
yeah.
because, well, while you were doing your walking, I also went on a little journey myself,
Oh,
and I went to New York, and I walked all over the place in New York. So I understand your struggle, the 30 miles you walked every day,
we're the same
and
person, basically.
yeah,
I'll
same
put you on
thing.
the plaque.
Uh, um, my friend, she told me, she said, Stephen, you can't just be like, this isn't California. You can't just go up to people and like talk to them like they're your best friend. Like, you basically kind of have to be rude and you got to ignore them. And I was like, oh, this was already like 2 days of me staying in New York. And I was like, oh, well, I've already been saying hello and talking to strangers and doing all the things that you're telling me not to do. And she was like, "Oh, okay. Well, you need to stop." And I said, "Oh, that's a bunch of baloney." Watch. And as we're saying this, we're walking back to her house, and I saw some people in the street. I said, "Watch this." And so we walked past them, and I was like, "Oh, hi. How are you?" And no idea who these people were. And they stopped mid sentence, and they're like, "Hi." And the other person said, "Hi, I'm good. How are you?" I said, "Oh, I'm doing great, thanks." And I just kept walking. And I turned back to my friend. And I said, "See, I told you." And and I think regardless of where you are, everybody knows how to be nice. You know,
Hmm. I,
everybody recognizes a smile.
I think, God, that's going to be a soundbite for sure. Um, but no, I think you're totally onto something. Like, I tried to wave at every single car that passed by and give a smile and, like, be what I
Yeah,
want to see, right? Like, I think that's the biggest thing too, is like the whole point of my walk was to find the good people. Like, there are good people out
yeah,
there became so cornerstone to Rangers Walk Across the Country. And I think that like, you attract what you put out, right?
mm,
Um, I don't know, I think that you might know, like, the more spiritually terms for that. Like, what is it like? Is it karma? Is it something? You know what I'm trying to get at? Or
I guess it's just energy matching.
energy matching? Yeah. And yeah, I mean, what was it? There was one thing as I was getting into California, people were starting to warn me more. I mean, people told me that I was silly for doing the whole thing to begin with and telling me that, people were going to mug me or stab me or do all these crazy things. And I've come out stab free. So to everybody that said that, all of my ligaments, all of my pieces and parts are still here. I lost a couple toenails, but that's on me. Um, but when I was getting into California, they were saying, hey, like you're walking through San Bernardino. Well, one was I was walking through Joshua Tree. So, 120 miles of nothing and nobody. And then I was
Mhm.
walking through 29 Palms into San Bernardino, into East LA, into West LA, right? So people were like, "Oh, like you just have to survive the desert." But then you're getting kind of into these I don't know, people were telling me like you're getting into like the kind of ghetto areas and be careful where you walk and they were telling me about what is it, Skid Row in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And that was something that
Yeah.
I knew was like there are certain communities and neighborhoods that you should avoid, but
Right.
like I don't know them all. Like, and I've told people some places that I walk through and they kind of look at me like, "You walk through there? Why?" I'm like, "Well, Google Maps doesn't tell you, hey buddy, this is a high crime area," or, if
Yeah.
I spent hours Googling every city I walk through, like that would just be insane, right? Like I would go
Right.
crazy trying to map everything out. But when you're walking, like
You'd still be walking because you would be zigzagging your way through the United
yeah,
States.
I'd be doing a walk around America, not across. Um, and I also do feel like, there was one exception. I was told by almost like, maybe hundreds of people on a post that I made to not walk through Memphis. And
Oh,
they said it was a very high, super, super high crime area. And, people were telling me very specific routes to walk through. So then that's why I kind of decided, hey, if if a lot of people are giving me these bad reviews, like again, we were kind of talking about testimonials a minute ago, maybe I
mhm.
really should avoid this area. But nothing, no other city I
Right.
walked through was as bad as what people were saying about Memphis. Which, like, I feel like
Sure.
a lot of people were also saying it can be done, just be careful. And I do want to visit Memphis because I do feel like there is a lot of history there and a lot of cool places I want to see, but maybe not
Mhm.
walking with all of my stuff on me, right?
Yeah.
But back to California, they're saying, higher homeless populations because throughout the entire walk, I never really encountered a lot of people that were homeless. I
Yeah.
do remember at one point in the middle of New Mexico, on this like 80-mile stretch of nothing, right? I passed another guy that was walking east. He wasn't walking across the country, but he didn't say he was. I assume he wasn't, so maybe I should have asked. But you know what I mean? Like that was probably the only experience I had of like a potentially homeless guy walking across also or walking
Yeah.
near me. Um,
Yeah.
but kind of what we're saying, like the dangerous thing, like I did encounter some homeless people while I was in San Bernardino and Los Angeles.
Hmm.
So what was it? There were three stories. I think two were in San Bernardino, one was in Los Angeles, and I don't know. I think it was like one of those moments that your own personal biases and your worldview kind of come into play, and you kind of
Yeah.
realize that maybe the way I see the world or the way I see other people isn't great. Um,
Uh-huh.
but I had what was it? I think I had just gotten into the outskirts of San Bernardino and I was walking by a gas station, a Dollar General, and a few other things. They weren't even open yet because it was so early. And as I was walking, I was about to cross the street at a red light, and there was another guy walking. So I was going this way. He was gonna like meet me, like we were gonna like bisect, right? And as
Hmm.
he was walking, I started walking, and he said something. I didn't quite hear what he said, like something Gatorade. And I was like I could feel like I didn't want to interact with this guy. Like he was a homeless guy. I felt scared. Like I could feel
Hmm.
that tightness in my chest. My hands were kind of shaking. Like I was nervous that something was going to happen. And
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh no, man, I don't have any on me. I'm sorry." And he like stopped and looked at me, and he was like, "No, do you want any Gatorade? I have an extra." And I was like, "Oh." Oh, no, I'm good, man. I'm sorry. Thank you. I appreciate it. I have like water already. He was like, "All right,
Yeah.
man, be safe in this heat," and like walked away. And I was like, "Oh, that was very pleasant." um, and then what was it? There was another guy. I think later that day. Like I think he looked like he was living out of his car, and he kind of just and I could tell because there was like clothes drying on it, and he kind of like yelled at me, like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I was again a little spooked. I was like, "Oh, you know, walking to the coast, dude. That's cool as hell. You want some water?" I'm like, oh, no, I'm good. I have a few gallons. He's like, best of luck,
Yeah.
brother, you know? So there was just a few things like that. And there was another gal that I walked by, and again, you just feel whenever you walk by someone like on the sidewalk, like I feel like the thing is like look forward, do not look at them, do not engage, because they're just going to ask you for something, right? Um, but she was sitting there eating lunch, and as I walked by, she like held it up and was like, "Do you want some?" And I'm like, "No, but thank you." You know, like so I was just like, "That's
You're
such."
like, no, but yes, but no, thank you.
I'm like, I really like ramen. Um, but yeah, so it's just like those kinds of things, like those moments of clarity of your worldview kind of being shattered in like the best way possible.
Mhm.
I think were
Yeah.
impactful.
You mentioned some people's reactions to your journey, and what has surprised you the most about uh, how people have reacted? I guess like before your walk, during your walk, and after your walk.
So I'm going to go on both sides here. I'm going to say the support side first. I was not
Right?
expecting so many strangers to be willing to let me stay with them. I thought that a
Mm,
lot more of my nights were going to be roughing it out in the cold, in the middle of nowhere, staying in hotels, which get expensive very fast, obviously. But just the insane amount of support that I got, like from South Carolina all the way to California. I think California is the only state where I didn't stay with a stranger, and that's because I have friends and families in California, obviously, because that's where
mhm.
I'm from. So I just think that, again, their willingness to support, to help out, and again, let me stay in their houses with their family at times, right? So I think that that just really speaks volumes of the type of people that are out there, that people they want to see good in the world, and that that's what you are
Right.
promoting, that that's what you're doing. Like I feel like a lot of people are very much willing to support that. So I think that
Mm,
I think that's the interesting thing too, is like on the in-person side, I got insane amounts of support and nice words, and like I never really had anything aggressive happen. The only aggressive thing that happened in person was dogs. And even then,
mhm.
it's like they're just protecting their houses, right? Like I have to protect myself at the
Right.
end of the day, but they're protecting their families too.
Sure.
But I would say on the negative side, there were times when I was on the news or I would post things. Actually, nobody ever really made any bad comments on my own posts. But like when I was on the news or other people posted about me, I would get some like very negative comments. And a lot of them were kind of around like what was it? There were some that were like, if he really wants to make a difference, he would promote this, 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 and this. Or
Hmm.
how in the hell is this supposed to do any good? Or
Hmm.
that's the dumbest thing ever. Or what else is there? Oh, I can't believe my tax money is going to support idiots like this. I got something like that once, and I'm like, my brother in Christ, like, I saved up for 3 years for this. Like, my bank accounts are drained. I'm not using any. Like, what government program do you think I'm on? Like, I'd love to
Yeah.
know because I want to apply for it at this point. But like, I'm not. Like people, like there were some people that took offense to it.
Mm.
And I think a lot of that kind of does stem from, I mean, this is top of mind right now from this morning's presentation, but a lot of it really does come from that like sabotaging voice that a lot of people have. Like they have these
Hmm.
stories of how they view the world, how they think about their own capabilities. So I think that seeing someone do something that is so out of the norm that doesn't align with their status quo or how they think the world should work, like really
Hmm.
does make them feel attacked. Therefore, they go on the offensive. So even when people would say things like that, I couldn't really, I don't know, I didn't want to take it as an attack, but more so like what I really wanted to do was be like very curious with them and kind of coach them through it. But I was
Hmm.
advised that perhaps when people are pissed off on the internet, throwing coaching questions at them may not be the best way to not have them try to hunt you down and run you over with their car. I don't think that that would happen, and I have talked to other walkers that do kind of clap back to what people say. Like if they say something negative, they will respond, and nothing ever happened to them. But I just didn't want to increase
Yeah.
any chances of finding the bad people, right? So I would typically
Right.
just
Yeah.
not engage with them, but just be super positive with everybody else that was taking time to comment on that. So I think
Yeah.
the 95% of positive interactions I had, like, are not overshadowed at all by the 5% of bad interactions I had.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Hmm.
In our first podcast together, I asked you a question,
Oh boy.
and you refused to answer it. And ever since then, people have always been like, "Oh my gosh, Stephen, what was he? What's the answer? What's the answer?" They want to know. People want to know. I asked you what were your uh what safety precautions
Mm.
and what protective equipment were you utilizing to protect yourself along the journey? And for your own protection, so people couldn't disarm you, you chose not to answer the question. And since you're no longer on the walk, will you answer the question? The people want to know.
Heck yes. So, in terms of self defense and safety measures that I took, the very first thing was, I don't know, I asked the question. A lot of people ask me, did I carry a firearm? Did I carry any kind of like handgun or anything? And the answer is no. I did not have any type of pew pew on me at any moment. I asked a few other walkers if they carried one, and every single one said no. There's a book called How to Walk Across America and Not Be an A-hole. In that book, which is that's kind of like what I found is like the Bible for walking across the country. Like he goes over everything, like the socks, the shoes, the weather, the this, the that, the route, the strategy, right?
Yeah.
The main reason is it's heavy, like firearms, ammo, maintenance. If they get wet, if they get rusted, like it causes issues. And then if you are looking to depend on that, it's going to cause issues, right? It's going to weigh you down. It's just going to be another thing to worry about. Laws and jurisdictions are very different, even by county, let alone states or cities, right? So
Yeah.
I tried to look into it. I tried to see if I could get some kind of like concealed carry permit, but it was like it would take almost a year to get them all. And by the time I started looking into it, I was like basically a year out. So it was like everything
Mm-hmm.
needs to align and be approved in order to even be able to get one. So I decided to just kind of forego that and not focus on that. And the other thing too is, what was it? If you are relying on a firearm, it changes how you psychologically deal with issues, right? Some of the advice I got was there really aren't going to be any issues that you can't talk your way out of. But if you
Mm-hmm.
rely on that firearm, like if you are in the middle of nowhere and, the issue there would be more like animals, right? Not that big
Mm-hmm.
of a deal. But if you are having interaction or altercation with a person, if you pull that trigger, no matter what, like the walk is over.
Yeah.
Like you can't come back from that. Like if you, whether or not you actually hit someone or like it changes the game. So I decided to forego that completely, and thankfully I was never in any situation where I even thought about even slightly needing to use one. But what I did carry was pepper spray, a stun gun, a few
Mm.
pocket knives, and at one point a machete.
Mm.
So, the pepper spray and the stun gun were things that I had from the very beginning. I always had the pepper spray in my little pouch, and the stun gun, it was like a little hand taser thing, right? Like it wasn't, maybe that's
Yeah.
even it doesn't shoot anything. It just like very
Yeah.
close quarters. That was always in the side strap of my backpack. But I didn't realize you had to charge it all the time. So at one point, like a few states in, I checked it to see if it still worked and it was dead. So I was like, well, thank God I didn't ever
Oh.
need it. So then I started charging it
Yeah.
every few nights just to make sure it was good. But the pepper spray, I just always had that there in case of dog issues. And the only time there were two times when I remember I got very close to using it, but what I ended up doing for both was a little bit different. Um, It also went through the wash a couple times, so who knows if it even worked by the end of the walk. Um, but in Amarillo, I was walking down the street. I had already dropped all my stuff off at my buddy's house that I was staying at for a few days, and I was just finishing up like the 9 or 10 miles I needed to do to get from where I stopped to his house. And I was walking
Mm.
along, and I had my pepper spray in my left pocket. My phone was in my right hand, and I had my backpack on. And out of nowhere, I heard this bark starting, and a big like Rottweiler. I can't even remember what kind. I don't even want to say what kind of dog it was because I can't remember. After I just said some type of dog, but it was like one of those big, like the dogs that people are scared of. Whatever. I don't want to add to their bad name. But again, he's
Yeah.
protecting his house. He's doing his thing. But he like tackled me like at the fence, and it was a chain link fence, and the bottom of the fence wasn't secure. So it came up, and he was trying to
Oh,
bite my ankles, bite at my feet, but I had my left hand down, pushing down on the chain link fence. But like I said, like if I
yeah.
had my pepper spray in my right pocket, I would have pepper sprayed him. But it was in my
Yeah.
left pocket, so I couldn't even get to it. Which again is probably a good thing because I feel like if I had pepper sprayed it, it would have caused other issues, right?
Mm.
So I was able to kind of like push the dog away and like kick at it and like scare it back just enough to run to the other side of the street and run down a little bit. And as I
Mm.
was running, the funny thing is it was wearing an emotional support dog vest. So I was like, it's supporting some emotions, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But that was the closest I ever got to actually using it. And again, if I had sprayed it, like there are repercussions. Like, what if the owner was watching through the fence and to them they were like, ha ha, he tried to bite the homeless guy, right? And then
Yeah.
they came out and they're like, why the hell did you pepper spray my dog? Like that could have caused issues. It also would have hurt the dog. Like, it could have caused long term issues, which I wouldn't want to happen, right? Like, ideal
Yeah.
situation. I don't want anything to get hurt. And another time was another dog incident. It was in the middle of New Mexico on Highway 60. And I think I was on the phone with Julie at the time. But like 5 or 6 dogs like ran up on me and started barking at me super intense. And I was pushing my cart. I had my backpack. But the main thing that I used to keep dogs away was I had a broken umbrella that I kept at the front at all times. So what I did was I
Mm.
kind of had it like dual wielding style, like Call of Duty, right? Like when you have your melee weapon and your thing. So I had like the stick like
Yeah.
this, and I had the pepper spray in the other hand, and I was like kind of like swatting them away with the stick and like yelling at them,
Mhm.
like being like make myself big, make myself scary and loud. Um, but that was the second time that I ever thought I needed to use it. More than just kind of having it close by when I was walking through kind of a spooky looking place. But other than that, I never
Yeah.
needed to use it. The pocket knives that I had, I don't even know where they were half the time. I usually only use them for paracord or for opening things or fixing things, right? And then, have you ever played the original Legend of Zelda game?
Nope.
No. So in Okay, so I'll kind of explain it through the story. So, near the end of my time in Mississippi, as I was walking into Arkansas, I was stopped by someone and they were like, "Oh, like do you have any kind of self-defense stuff?" Well, he was a host, so I was like more willing to tell him like yes or no. It wasn't exactly on the border. It was close to one of the lines. I can't remember. Um, but I was like, oh no, like I don't really have like I showed him everything I had. I'm like, this is all I got. Like, to be honest. He's like, oh, okay. So then the next day he found me and he's like, hey Ranger, like I got something for you. And I'm like, yeah, what's up? And he like reaches into his like side thing and pulls out a machete and it's like sheathed and I'm like, okay, thank you. And he's like, yeah, just in case you run into any issues with people or dogs or other critters. And I was like, okay, thank you. Um, And in The Legend of Zelda, I think in the very first game, it's kind of like you get your first sword when the I don't know when the main like gurus or something is like, here, take this for protection. You might need it before you start playing the game. And I just felt like I was like given this like magical weapon from a sage, like city town counselor, right? And I had that with me for again, the duration of the walk, so about halfway to near the end. And it was one of my buddies I stayed with. She dropped me off. And that was the last day that I saw her from the walk. She dropped me off, and um, she was like helping me load up the cart, and she like picked up the machete and was like, "This is super cool." I'm like, "Yeah, do you want it?" And she looked at me, and Steve, I thought it looked like I just gave a little girl a pony, right? Like her eyes lit up, and she like grabbed it. She was like, "Are you serious?" And I'm like, I, I kind of wasn't, but yeah, sure, it's yours, dude. Like, I don't need it. So she was like super excited. It was adorable. But I was like, yeah, sure, take it. Like, I haven't needed it this far, and it looks like you would have more use out of it than I would, because um, they're a little bit more like outdoorsy. So I'm like, I think that's like her vibe is like cool things like that. And I was like, yeah, you can have it. I don't need it anymore. I'm like, I'm not gonna be able to take it on the plane with me in a few weeks anyway. So what am I gonna do?
Right.
But yeah, no.
It's almost like in the video games when you like see a merchant before the final boss or something like
Yeah.
that, and then you restock all your stuff.
Yeah. But except you like have to get rid of the weapons before you get to the final boss. It's
Yeah.
it's weird. I don't know. But yeah, so that's what I carried for self-defense. Yeah, the only other times weird things happened, it was just like I had to talk myself out of it. But again, it's not like I even needed to use speech checks very often, right?
Mm-hmm. So since coming back, you've gone full force on some coaching opportunities, right?
Yep.
You mentioned you were developing some workshops and some programs. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, heck yeah, I want to take a chance to sell my stuff. No. Yeah. So really, I started my company within range coaching before even starting the walk. And I really wanted to have some way to really focus on what was it? Just the purpose of my company in terms of how do I say this better? I feel like I butchered that. The the mission for my walk was very much designed around my coaching practice.
Mm-hmm.
My coaching practice is, let me make sure I say it 100% correctly. So I I've gone through so many iterations of my mission statement. It's like the mission has always been centered around helping people help people, right? Like working with entrepreneurs, with nonprofit leaders, with community members, because I really feel like those are the people that are out there making a legitimate difference in the world. So my coaching mission is to help entrepreneurs grow their business by breaking through their own self-sabotaging beliefs and aligning with purpose-driven action, right? And my mission for the walk was to highlight, learn from, and work with people in the US that are making a difference in their community. Can you tell which one I've said more often? So it was really just focused around that. And that was really just the main thing to begin with, was learning from these people so that I could be a more effective coach. Because I feel like our duty as Americans, which spanning to whatever country you're from, right? Our duty as Americans is to make the best better, right? Help other people, help yourself, like just make an impact that's bigger than yourself. I kind of use it as like the ripple, right? So like when you throw a rock into a pond, it makes that initial ripple, right? But even the impact from that pebble throws water in other directions and creates more and more and more and more of an impact. So theoretically, it goes on forever. Physics aside, right? So that's what I want to kind of do with the coaching practice. So a lot of the workshops that I'm doing, it's going to be all based around the walk. So I've already done a couple. What is it? The Power of Purpose and Breaking Through the Noise, which is the first one is focused on mission, vision, and values. The second one is focused on defining your own sabotaging voice, that inner critic, and ways to deal with that voice so that you can move forward. So that's part of my Walking Towards Success workshop series that I'm putting together. Right now it's just
Hmm.
5, but I'm sure it's going to go up and up and up and up based off of the different lessons that I learn. And everything that I learned from
Yeah.
creating those workshops and the feedback that I get is also going to help solidify those concepts for the book. And
Hmm.
well, let me back up. The reason that I centered everything around the coaching practice was because I heard a lot of times that when people finish a walk or something big, they kind of go through something called like a post blank depression. Like artists when they go on
Mm.
tour go through a post tour depression. A lot of walkers that I
Hmm.
talk to go through a post walk depression. And the way that I kind of looked into it and what I discovered was that it's because they centered a lot of their purpose. Like, I prepped for this thing for 3 years or 2.5 years. I wanted to do it for 4 years before. I was in the thick of it for 5.5 months, and then it's over, right? And that's why a lot of people say, it's more about the journey than the destination. It's because, like, I was in the water. I finished my walk across America in 2 seconds by hitting the water and jumping into it, right? But I was learning throughout that entire process. And I wanted to make sure that, in a way, the purpose of the walk never really ends. So I wanted to align to something that I could continuously do for the rest of forever. So,
Yeah.
what is it? To highlight, learn from, and work with, instead of focusing on those three, now it's more so like teaching, collaborating with, and educating folks, right? Or partnering with them.
Hmm.
So that's why the workshops come in, because I'm taking those lessons I learned and I'm teaching them. With the one-to-one coaching, it's partnering with entrepreneurs, nonprofit leaders, and community members so that they can also make those leaps and make the impacts that they know that they want to create. With the Skool community, it's fostering a group, that community of people that can learn from each other, that can support one another to move towards a bigger, brighter, better America slash whatever country they happen to be from, right? So I think that's really the biggest thing is, this is my experience, comma, that's great, hyphen, semicolon, whatever. What am I going to do with it to help others? So I think that that
Yeah.
is the cornerstone to
What I,
answer your question in the long
I,
form.
yeah, what I think is really cool, and I'm sure you planned this, but you've really utilized your experiences on the walk to teach these lessons to people who might be stuck in their own lives, and you can say, "Well, here's what I did, and here's what I experienced, and here's what I felt, and here's how I overcame these challenges. Let's see how you can overcome your challenge."
Yeah, no, I think that's really a huge thing. And even in the few people, like a couple of the clients that I have right now, which I try to make sure that they don't end up coaching themselves. But they start saying these stories out loud, like, "Oh, I can't do that because of X, Y, and Z," and then they stop and they
Yeah.
pause and they're like, "Wait, you walked across the country. I can't say that to you." And I'm like, "No, no, no. Like, you can. Like, say it out loud. Like, bring these voices to light, because that's what I had to do, right? Like, I had to acknowledge the sabotaging voice that I had. I had to acknowledge
Hmm.
that I didn't have a clear mission or vision or purpose for the walk. And that's like
Yeah.
it's very much a, these are all the things I learned in my year-long coaching program. These are the things that I learned throughout college in my management courses. The things that I learned in these podcasts about business or life or whatever. Now it's like the ultimate trial by fire to see if these things work. And I think they work, and here's how they worked for me. And kind of putting my own
Hmm.
spin on those concepts. Like the chunking thing with the frog in the pond. Or
Hmm.
um, what is it? Pick up the cat, which is the whole idea of accountability. Like certain things may not be your fault. Like when I found Walker, that wasn't my fault, right? I didn't put the cat there. I didn't leave him out there. I didn't throw him. I didn't cause that. But now that it's in front of me, like it is my responsibility to do something about it, right?
Right.
So I think that just those lessons and being able to break them down and showcase through, like again, let's, I don't want to sound like I'm being very like self-aggrandizing, but like through very interesting stories, be able
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
solidify these concepts and present them in a way, like my brain works very much through metaphors. And I think that being able to break these concepts down into those unique metaphors is, one, can help a lot of people, and two, already has been helping people. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that's like to what you were saying, is that this experience I think would mean a lot less to me if I wasn't trying to use it to help people in some way.
Right. Right. So you've got the
Hmm.
workshops. You've got which they're virtual, so people can log into whatever platform you're using for watch those,
Hmm.
and they're free, right?
Yeah, for right now, the ones online are going to be free. It might change in the future. I don't want to make any promises, but as of now, what, October 28th, 2024, those ones are going to
Yeah.
be like I'm working on making it good, right? So it's more
Okay.
so like please give me feedback. Let's
You also have your online uh, forum through the Skool community, Skool.
hmm
You also provide, um, I guess, independent coaching services as well,
hmm
and you've mentioned it a few times, but you have more workshops coming up in the future.
Yep. So I have at the moment, the free online workshops through Zoom. I have the Skool community, Never Peak, the First Steps, which is that one's going to be free forever, that specific community. I have the Never Peak Project podcast, which it's a podcast. It's also free content. And then the one-to-one coaching and the group coaching services, those are different. They're paid, but they're also the cool thing about those is even if you aren't local to what the San Carlos or Half Moon Bay area, like I can coach people from anywhere. One of my clients
Yeah.
is near Sacramento. I've coached somebody in Florida. I think I had a client in Texas. Okay, she lived in Texas and moved to Oklahoma. But I can coach people from anywhere via Zoom or phone calls. So that's also a really cool
Yeah.
thing, is that I can reach anybody anywhere thanks to technology and everything else.
I have one last question for you.
Yes.
Um, Obviously, you did all that walking. I'm sure your legs probably developed lots of muscling.
They're tree trunks.
How has your body, huh?
I said yes. They have. There's some tree trunks for sure.
How has your body adjusted to not walking 20 plus miles a
Yeah,
day?
I'm glad you asked. So what is it? I finished on August 31st. The month of September, I was so tired. I was
Mm,
exhausted, um, like physically, mentally, emotionally. Um, there were times where I was like, I think I slept like 12, 15, whatever hours, like a stupid amount that night. And the next day I wake up
mm,
and I'm like, I can barely keep my eyes open. Like I would drink
mm,
coffee, I would have an energy drink, like way more milligrams of caffeine than I should have had, and I was still
mm.
falling asleep. I went on a cruise with Julie's family to Greece and Turkey afterwards. Like I think
Yeah.
we left a week after I got back, and dude, it was rough. Like we were there for I think almost 2 weeks, and the amount of like caffeine and just like forcing myself to be awake at times, it was
Yeah.
intense. And I messaged Mark and Andrew, Mark Dudek and Andrew Kivett, and they were the guys that walked before me. We had our little
Mm,
group chat, coast to coast crew. Um, but I was like, hey guys, like this is weird. Were you guys also tired after your walk? And both of them were like, yeah, dude, for a whole month or two, like we're
wow.
hard getting out of bed. We were just exhausted, and we're kind of chitter chattering for a little bit about it. What was it? I think Mark was like, dude, not even sleep could touch. It could come nowhere near fixing this tired. And we think that a lot of it really stems from, I was in this fight or flight mode for 6 months. Like that became my baseline. Like
Yeah.
even when I took a week or two off, I always knew that I was going to get back into it. Like I wasn't done yet. So
Yeah.
once I got back and I was safe, my body was like, great, you're not running on adrenaline anymore. You're not dodging cars going 70, 80 miles an hour at this point. You're not worried about dogs running up on you. Yeah, here's all your sleep hormones, I guess, right? So that was rough.
Hmm.
Um, I think the week after or so, I mean, I was kind of used to being sore, but my legs and my body were just sore all over. And that faded
Mm.
pretty quick. But something that I did notice was my upper body strength and cardio were absolutely shot. I
Mm.
tried doing a half Murph, which is just like a workout thing that people do. But it starts off with a mile run. And I tried doing that with one of my buddies, and I could barely make it even like a tenth of a mile before I had to stop. And this was only a few
Really?
days after, yeah, like not that long after the walk. So I kind of thought that my
Oh, wow.
cardio would be built up because I was walking 20, 30 miles a day.
Yeah.
But I guess there's a
Yeah.
huge difference between what would that be like in like Fallout stats, like agility and endurance.
I guess.
Like
Yeah.
I could go, like he might be able to hit 5 or 10 miles way faster than I can, but he's not going to be able to hit 40 miles in a day, right?
Yeah.
Like I could.
Yeah.
So I think that that was really interesting. It's something that I'm still working on. I hit my first full mile like a week or two ago. So what, a month and a half after finishing the walk. And the upper body strength thing. Before I left, I could bench, I think like 2.5 plates. So like, oh God, what is that? Let me see if I have my. I want to make sure I say my numbers right because I'm a very strong boy, and I want to make sure that everybody knows that.
You don't want the fitness community to come at you.
I don't want them to be like, "That's it." Let me see. I can bench more on a Tuesday. Um. Oh, so my bench was 275, so 275 pounds. My squat was 365. And my deadlift. Oh no, I changed it. Oh, I got way better. Sorry. My top bench was 300 for three. Squat was 405 for three. And my deadlift was 450 for four. So for all of those, I haven't retried any of those yet because I don't really have the right equipment for it. But I did try to do a plate, which is like 130 or so pounds on bench
Mhm.
at Planet Fitness, and I thought my arms were going to explode. It hurt. So I'm in a rebuild process right now of getting my strength back. And, as I get more clients, as I kind of build up my practice, I'm going to get a better gym membership than Planet Fitness. But for right now,
Mhm.
I'm just doing a lot of body weight exercises to build it up. But body wise, the sleep and the upper body strength were the things that were so, I wasn't expecting that really when I got
Yeah.
back.
Well, I think that's all the questions I have for you today.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Yeah, no, that was solid. I think that we might end up doing more of these. I think next time what I will do is actually put a call for questions from the community
Oh yeah.
and then have you read
Yeah, that'd be
those,
cool.
or maybe we can actually hunt down Ranger response to mean comments content and find the actual things that
Um.
people have said. But I think that there's definitely, I mean, I'm not going to stop talking about the walk and the lessons. And I
Yeah.
think I've been telling people
By the way,
even,
Are
what?
you gonna edit this before you
A little bit.
post it?
Yeah.
Okay. So like the beginning part and this part you'll cut out.
I mean, unless we say something really funny right now.
Oh. Uh, um. I just thought of something. What are your thoughts on it if you put out a thing? Oops. If you put out a thing on Instagram or whatever, and maybe it can be like a coaching related thing, maybe something that might be something that someone might be struggling with. I don't know. That's just a thought.
What do you like? Almost like an Ask Ranger
Like
kind of a
a
thing, like a
yeah, like a helpline type of
yeah,
thing, I
dude. Okay,
guess.
so something that you can do on Riverside is with the people that are spectating, you can call people in
Uh-huh.
from the audience,
Oh yeah.
and like pull them onto the show. So like if you and I did a show, like I don't know, like reacting to Reddit threads or something, right? Um, we could bring someone on that has like a similar story, or I could do like 15, 20-minute coaching sessions from beginning to end and then
Yeah.
bring in somebody else that has something. So like that is something that you can definitely do.
Yeah. 'Cause they used to be, I'm sure it's still a thing, but like, there was a lot of advice columns in the newspapers and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever watched Therapy
So,
Gecko?
no.
What?
No, I haven't.
Oh my God, you have to watch Therapy Gecko. I'm going to send you a video.
Okay.
Thank you again, Stephen, for being a guest and for, I don't know, switching it up on me and making me the interviewee. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me on again. And I always enjoy talking to you and figuring out what you're up to these days.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, we'll probably have some more and I don't know, maybe more special themed episodes. Now that I'm editing everything myself, it's a little bit easier to get out episodes. So, but again, I appreciate
Awesome.
it. We'll see you in the next one. And for everybody listening right now, thank you so much for all of your time, dedication, and energy in terms of your support of my walk across the country. Like I said earlier, the mission for the walk is never going to end. I'm always going to be looking for people that are doing good in the world and reminding you that if you are looking for the good people and you can't seem to find any, all you need to do is to go look in a mirror and you'll find one there. I appreciate you guys, and remember to never settle, never quit, and never peak. I'll see you guys next week.